You know how hard it is to win this league, and now 11 in a row, 11-0.
I can't believe it, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are 11-0, sitting atop the entire NBA, and they're only the 12th team in NBA history to pull off such an incredible feat. For reference, the last time this happened, it was with the 2015 to 2016 Golden State Warriors, which of course was the same year that the former dynasty broke the record for most wins in a season with 73. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like and subscribe to get the latest and greatest NBA news to your device as soon as possible. And now that we get all of that out of the way, cue the intro. So Stephon Diggs is out for the season, and the Houston Texans were without Nico Collins on Sunday Night Football when they faced off against the Detroit Lions, which meant that Tank Dell was going to see more targets. The problem? I had no idea who the Texans wide receiver 2 was going to be, which made it very difficult to project receiving yards at the very beginning of the game. Now, as Sunday Night Football started, we saw John Mechie explode for over 65 receiving yards in the beginning, so at halftime, I decided to take advantage of this. I went on PrizePicks to check his live projection and saw that he only needed 6 more receiving yards in the second half for his square to hit. And based off of the flow of the game, you didn't need to be a genius to know this was going to work. So I also saw that David Montgomery only needed 15 more rush yards in the second half for his square to hit. So I decided to test the waters with my first live pick and made an easy $60. Now, if you want to take advantage of this brand new feature, make sure you download PrizePicks and use my promo code microphone to get a free $50 when you make a play of $5 or more. And if you followed me on Instagram, you would have seen this projection on my story. But since it's a live projection, I highly recommend turning on my story notification so you get them immediately. And thank you, PrizePicks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Before I continue, I just want to say that as impressive as what the Cavaliers are doing is, I literally can't go without saying that we all have to remember that once upon a time, the Warriors literally won 24 games in a row to start a season. And what's pretty ironic about that, though, as it pertains to the Cavs organization, is that it was the same year LeBron led them to their first championship after being famously insulted by Klay Thompson, who said he got his feelings hurt just before blowing a 3-1 series lead.
Obviously, people have feelings, and people's feelings get hurt even if they're called a bad word. I guess his feelings just got hurt.
Nonetheless, I'm not saying that the Cavaliers are going to reach that historic mark, but I will say that they are looking absolutely unbeatable right now. After winning 6 of their first 10 games by double-digit points, 3 of them by 20 or more, and another by 19, they're becoming the beacon of attention for the entire league, which is kind of crazy considering the fact that this team was in so many trade rumors throughout the offseason. Fans were wondering what the problem was. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell weren't a formidable backcourt duo. Either Donovan Mitchell was going to get traded to the Knicks or the Miami Heat or the Los Angeles Lakers, or Darius Garland was going to get shipped off to the San Antonio Spurs to be the perfect point guard for Victor Wembanyama. None of that ended up happening. Now, the long story short about the Cavaliers is that this team is not only balling their asses off in a big way, but they truly do look like one of the most complete teams that can be found right now in either conference. But what's crazy about this is they're not like any contending team. What's the difference between a team like the 2023 NBA champion Denver Nuggets, the 2022 champion Golden State Warriors, the 2021 champion Milwaukee Bucks, the 2020 champion Los Angeles Lakers, and this year's Cleveland Cavaliers? Well, the Cavaliers' success seems sustainable over the long run. All they really had to do was make one signature hire, Kenny Atkinson, which fans of this channel would know I'm a huge fan of, especially what he was able to do with the 2018 and 2019 Brooklyn Nets. I credit him for D'Angelo Russell's only All-Star appearance, Spencer Dinwiddie's development, Karis LeVert's development. Now look, this isn't a Kenny Atkinson puff piece, but I just have to give credit where credit's due because I knew from the very beginning this man is a remarkable head coach. He had the opportunity to take the Charlotte Hornets position, and he ended up being patient and waited for the perfect head coaching position for himself, and it paid off. Another really remarkable thing about their start to the season is that not only did the Cavaliers break their team record for most wins, wins, but it actually coincided directly with Atkinson also breaking the record for most wins to start a season as the new head coach of any franchise. They literally all got to celebrate together. It's safe to say that things are clicking on all cylinders in Cleveland right now, but even though they are one of the only teams to ever do this, a lot of people are still skeptical about their future, being that they've only made it out of the first round of the playoffs one time in the last 6 years, ever since LeBron's second stint with the team. However, being that their first round win did happen to come to last year during a season where they won 48 games, some people are also considering that with the consistency in the roster, the new and experienced head coach, a growing base of talent, and a legitimate star in Donovan Mitchell, that this could be the year that they finally assert themselves as the single biggest competition to Boston in the entire Eastern Conference. And I have to say that with all the noise that has been going around the league by way of stars joining each other, if you look at their roster, it is exceptionally well put together. They have both talent and pieces that just somehow seem to fit without the need to go out and bring in another top dog beside Mitchell that would only disrupt team chemistry. And this could be the way that Kenny Atkinson wants it, seeing as the main reason why the Brooklyn Nets fired Kenny Atkinson was because Atkinson had no interest in coaching Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. He didn't want to deal with the egos of some of the game's biggest stars. And though Cleveland does certainly have star power, they just seem to gel better than a lot of other teams, and that especially goes for their premier backcourt of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, who is quietly in the midst of a breakout season. I don't know if you noticed, but Garland dropped 39 points just a few days ago versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Mike, it's just the Milwaukee Bucks, they stink. But it's still impressive to say the least. Darius Garland reminded people that he was actually an all-star back in 2022. On top of that, do you remember when there was concern about whether or not Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen could be a viable front court? Well, they're averaging a combined 32 points and 20 rebounds a game so far, and playing with great chemistry together on both ends of the floor. You can actually begin to see just how solid this Cavaliers roster actually is. Then you add sixth man Caris LeVert, who averaged over 18 points per game 4 times throughout his career with several different teams, and who has a 50-point game and 3 other 40-point games under his belt. It's pretty obvious that when they throw their top lineup out there, it's undoubtedly one of the best that can be found anywhere league-wide. And that doesn't even mention Ty Jerome, who also gives them double digits per night, giving them 6 different players that average double figures, with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell averaging over 20 points per game. So yeah, this isn't just me talking. They have the numbers to back it up. At 123 points per game, they currently lead the league in scoring. On top of that, they are number 1 in the league in total field goal percentage, as the only team shooting over 50%. But they're not just shooting the lights out. On top of this, they're sharing the ball incredibly. Currently, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 5th in the league in assists at almost 29 per game. And if that's not enough, they're also the top 3-point shooting team in the league and have the 7th least number of turnovers per game with under 13. With these statistics in mind, you can see that Kenny Atkinson clearly has them buying into a specific style of play. They take care and share the ball, they play with pace, and they barrage you with 3-pointers, and it's making them an offensive juggernaut that will be able to compete with almost anyone in the league. It's also a huge reason that they were only one of 2 teams in NBA history to start a season 9-0 while scoring at least 110 points in every single game. Just so that we understand how unprecedented what they are doing is, the only other team that was able to pull this off was the Philadelphia 76ers all the way back in 1960-61, who were led by Will Chamberlain, who just a year before had won MVP as a rookie and was averaging 38 points and 27 rebounds per game. But don't just take it from me. People league-wide are obviously taking notice of how well this team is playing and how sustainable what they have built seems to be. Longtime basketball guru Tim Legler recently spoke about how impressive they have been in a SportsCenter interview after they defeated the Pelicans.
A year ago, they lose in the second round of the playoffs, but they're much better. And the reason is because they've turned up the volume on the 3-point shooting. It's unleashed them offensively. The versatility of the 2 bigs, Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, the way that they're interchangeable defensively as a rim protector and guards on a switch on a pick and roll. They've got a star in Donovan Mitchell, obviously, but then they've also got Darius Garland, stable of shooters, 6th man in Caris LeVert. They just check every box in what you want offensively, and they compete hard defensively every night. Clearly, they've connected with Kenny Atkinson. They've got a great start going. I think this team is going to be very relevant in the mix near the top of the East the entire season.
With all this said, and with how dominant they have been so far this season, it's where the big looming question comes in. And that big question, of course, is if this team is actually a legitimate title contender or not. And the truth is, when they reached 8 wins in a row, there was a lot of that going around. Then they reached 9 and there was even more. And I guess it's kind of fair, seeing as the best teams they had beaten until then were probably the Knicks and the Lakers, Lakers, but if you saw any of their game against the 7-1 Warriors, then you would know that this team is 100% for real. I mean, they absolutely obliterated the Golden State Warriors' #2 ranked defense with their 5th 130-point game of the season. And what's better is that they did it with style, pouncing on the former champions out of the gate on a 20-2 run and leading after the first half by 41 points. What was crazy about it is that they dominated them while Donovan Mitchell was the 6th leading scorer in the game and literally finished the contest with only 12 points. This all proves that asking whether or not they are a title contender is a silly question, with literally the entire rest of the Eastern Conference at 500 or below. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it really does seem like this entire season is going to be a 2-team race in the East. The real question then becomes whether or not they can beat the Boston Celtics in a 7-game series. And yes, it's a tall task seeing as Boston is currently 8-2, and Jason Tatum is really trying to chase an MVP trophy, you could just tell. But thankfully enough, we won't have to wait that long to see how these two teams stack up against each other. The Cavs and Celtics are actually set to face off against each other on November 19th in one of Cleveland's group stage games in the upcoming NBA Cup. That being said, I think it's safe to say if Cleveland does manage to beat the reigning champions, that it actually shouldn't come as a huge surprise to anybody, but it's an excellent measuring stick and should tell Kenny Atkinson how they've been so far. Cleveland's rise was actually captured fabulously by Steve Kerr in his recent post-game interview after getting decimated by Cleveland.
Well, they've been building to this for several years. I mean, this is not just like all of a sudden the Cavs are good. They've been good. So the continuity matters, and they've obviously off to a great start. Clearly one of the best teams in the league.
And if you look at it, what Kerr said is absolutely true. They've been building to this. In the 3 years after LeBron left for Los Angeles, the Cavs won a grand total of 60 games, with 2 of those seasons ending in under 20 wins. In 3 years following that, they won 44 games, followed by 51 in last year's 48. And with the way they're playing right now, they appear as if they're currently taking that next step. So to me, the question of whether or not they're title contenders is actually kind of absurd. I don't believe this is a fluke. I believe the right head coach came in, made the right adjustments, and got the most out of his players. The biggest problem going into the season wasn't the Cleveland Cavaliers' depth, it wasn't the talent they had on the roster. It was whether or not these core pieces, these extremely talented players, were all capable of playing with each other. Was Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell a viable backcourt tandem? Could Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley work in the front court? I love seeing teams getting rewarded for making the right decisions. In the offseason, there was a path for the Cleveland Cavaliers to blow up their entire roster. I'm very thankful that they didn't. They fired their head coach, which I said is what they should have done, and they got the right man for the job in Kenny Atkinson, which I wasn't speculating Kenny Atkinson to the Cavaliers, but obviously it's the right hire. I'm very happy for Cavaliers fans that actually not only have a championship contending roster, but could also be a championship contender for years to come in the Eastern Conference. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this, because a team that isn't having as much success currently is the Philadelphia 76ers. Everything's going wrong for them. We have a separate video on this. Joel Embiid even punched a reporter in the midst of all this. I'll leave a link to it in the end screen and I'll meet you guys there. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.